client recently told me, "I know what I want to do. I just don't trust it yet." She wasn't confused. She wasn't chaotic. She could describe very clearly what felt off in her life and what she felt drawn towards instead. What stopped her wasn't lack of insight. It was hesitation. She was waiting to feel calm enough, regulated enough, safe enough to believe herself. I hear versions of this all the time. Not as panic, not as overwhelm, but as a quiet self-interruption. A sense that knowing has arrived too early, that clarity to be legitimate should feel steadier, less charged, more settled. And we've learned to treat that pause as wisdom. But I'm no longer convinced it is. In the first weeks of the year, many of us feel we should already have clarity. And when we don't, we assume something inside us hasn't organized properly yet. In the previous essay, I talked about how January pressure interferes with perception, how clarity doesn't arrive on schedule, and how we end up blaming ourselves instead of the conditions we're operating under. Today, I want to take that one step further. I want to talk about what tends to replace clarity when we stop trusting it. Nervous system language entered our lives for good reasons. It helped us name what happens when we push too hard, when we override limits, when exhaustion gets treated like a personal failure. For many sensitive people, this language brought real relief. And still, something subtle has shifted. More and more, clarity is treated as suspect unless it arrives through regulation. Discernment is framed as premature unless the system feels fully settled. Knowing is asked to wait its turn. Regulation has quietly become a kind of gatekeeper. If something feels charged, we assume it must be distortion. If something feels urgent, we assume it must be trauma. If something feels clear but not calm, we set it aside. This doesn't make people safer. It makes them hesitant. What gets lost in all of this is orientation. Orientation is not planning. It's not self-improvement. It's not calming down. Orientation is the ability to know where you are before you decide where to go. Not precisely, relationally. When people learn orienteering, they're not asked to pinpoint exact coordinates the way GPS does. They learn to establish bearings. They learn what's nearby, what's farther away, what direction opens, what direction tightens. That kind of knowing doesn't require certainty. It requires honesty. When I was learning to drive, long before there were phones to tell us where to go, my father insisted I learn the map. In our city, that meant a thick MAPSCO book, one axis alphabetical, the other numerical. A location might be something like page 79, B12. Exact enough to orient, but only meaningful in relation to the surrounding pages. Before I could drive anywhere alone, I had to locate myself, then locate where I was going, then trace more than one possible route. Because streets close, traffic happens, plans change. What mattered wasn't certainty. What mattered was understanding how places connected. My father considered this essential to safety, not because it prevented getting lost, but because it meant I wouldn't panic if I did. That's what orientation actually offers. Not control, agency. When orientation is skipped, attention turns inwards as monitoring. People become very good at noticing internal states. What feels activating, what feels regulating, what feels safe or unsafe. But they lose access to a different kind of information, where they actually are in their lives. I see this most clearly in people who are deeply self-aware and strangely stuck. They can name patterns, histories, nervous system responses. But when it comes time to move, everything feels heavy. Every decision carries the fear of being wrong. They aren't lacking insight. They're lacking position. Sensitive systems feel this acutely. Sensitivity isn't fragility. It's relational intelligence. It picks up on subtle shifts of timing, of fit, of coherence. Under pressure, that signal gets scrambled. Not because it's faulty, because pressure compresses perception. This is why so many sensitive people are misread as indecisive, as dysregulated, as unready, when what they actually need is space to locate themselves honestly. Over time, I've noticed something very consistent in my work. The strongest indicator that someone will be able to move forward is not confidence, it's not regulation, it's not even motivation. It's honesty about where they actually are. Not where they wish they were, not where they think they should be, but where they actually are in relation to their energy, their constraints, their desires, and the season they are in. That kind of honesty is quiet, but it changes everything. Once orientation is restored, decisions become lighter. Options narrow without force. Action stops being about proving readiness and starts being responsive. This isn't an argument against regulation. It's an argument against asking regulation to do the work of orientation. You don't need to feel perfectly calm before clarity is allowed to appear. And you don't need to decide anything yet. You're allowed to begin by noticing where your attention already goes, what it keeps circling, what it avoids, what feels nearer and what feels far away. This is where we begin this quarter. Not with declarations, not with plans, and not with fixing ourselves. We begin by restoring orientation, by telling the truth about where we are in relation to our lives, our bodies, and the ground beneath us. From there, clarity doesn't need to be summoned. It tends to arrive on its own, once perception is no longer under pressure.